right, we're going to go to our regular outsider. She's a senator for Queensland. Amanda Stoker, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well. Nice to see you all this morning.
Now, you're in Adelaide today, is that right?
I am, but heading home in a moment.
Ah, fantastic. Well, good. Well, Queensland, I'm sure, misses you. Now, you've, as I said earlier, the mainstream media have caught on to you, which is great. Obviously, they discovered you on Outsiders, which is also great. Now, tell us all about the kerfuffle with Sydney University. Michael Spence, you wrote a letter to Michael Spence where after he was galled or surprised or astonished or whatever by your questioning in Senate estimates whether Sydney University was doing enough to protect free speech. Talk us through it.
It was really interesting to see the Vice-Chancellor of Sydney University, Michael Spence, say in the Sydney Morning Herald earlier this week that he was galled, really affronted by the idea that someone like me had tried to scrutinise whether or not the $17.5 billion, not million, billion dollars that Australians spend on tertiary education, our universities, was being applied in a way that was consistent with the notion of intellectual freedom and free speech. We know this matters because if universities aren't producing people who are capable of listening to and engaging with and debating different ideas, then they're not going to be able to solve problems, right? So he found this to be a complete affront. And I mean, that says something about the arrogance of our universities, right? But it also says something about how little he understands the role that free speech and intellectual freedom plays in developing useful graduates. So I tried to, in my letter, explain to him, kind of from first principles, why it is that we need intellectual freedom on universities. It used to be that this was, part of the DNA of university leadership, but hey, look, I'm happy to help if I can be useful.
Now, Amanda, I was astonished to also read his statement saying this is a both sides problem. It's the progressives and the conservatives who are as bad as each other. But correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember the last time conservative students blockaded a progressive giving a speech or a progressive academic from teaching their course. This is not a both sides issue at Australian universities.
You're right, Rita. It's one of the things I pulled him up on in the letter. I said, look, all of my research shows that every single instance of what they call deplatforming, which is essentially loudly and violently preventing, conservative or controversial people from showing up on campus and speaking, all of the misbehaviour that we've seen in recent years has come from the left. Whether that is Colonel Richard Kemp being blockaded by the anti-Israel left from Sydney University, whether it's Bettina Arndt being blockaded by the feminist left, whether it's Christian students being violently harassed on campus for not having a pro-same-sex marriage view. There's been heaps of examples of the left giving the right a hard time, but in all my looking, I couldn't find one that goes the other way. So for him to say that both sides are as bad as each other is grossly unfair.
James?
So one of the things that I've also noticed is they do this thing where they say, oh, well, no, you can speak, you can have your group, but you have to pay for security. What can be done to the universities? Is there something about maybe saying, your funding is going to have to take some sort of hit until you start to guarantee free speech, have some sort of charter of rights? Are we at that stage yet where that sort of stick needs to be applied?
Well, look, the French review that was conducted recently suggested that there needed to be from our universities a commitment to a charter of intellectual freedom and free speech perspectives. And that's something akin to what we've called like the Chicago Statement in the US, where universities clearly express their commitment to expressing a whole range of perspectives. They express their commitment to the idea that students have to be able to cope with a whole lot of different worldviews, and that there will be no intellectual safe spaces where you can retreat to that with which you are comfortable. There will be no deplatforming of people whose ideas you think you don't like, even though you never heard them because, you rioted to stop them arriving on campus. And I think that's a really positive step. It's really great to see that the University of Western Australia has come out saying they're putting together something of that nature. It'll be wonderful to see, I hope, many other universities get on board with a similar kind of measure. But if universities aren't prepared to confront this reality, I think we need to be open to the prospect of pulling their funding, because it is a condition of federal funding agreements with the universities that they safeguard intellectual freedom and academic freedom. And right now, as that Senate estimates exchange exposed, TEXA and our government agencies are just not putting any scrutiny into whether or not these measures are being met.
Fantastic work, Amanda, and I think we can start with those exorbitant salaries of the Vice-Chancellors and others at our universities. Adani, fantastic week for Queensland. You're Senator for Queensland. You must be thrilled that finally the jobs will be coming their way. Tell us your thoughts on how the week unfolded.
It's really wonderful to see this project finally get the go-ahead. There are literally thousands of Queensland families that have been in a holding pattern waiting for the trad Palaszczuk government to get off their bottoms and get moving with this, to put the green agenda, the green extremists from the city aside and do what Queensland needs. And so to see those people, the 14,500 people who've shown interest in a job at the Adani mine finally get their opportunity to go ahead, to finally see all the small businesses who are waiting on the opportunity to supply the Adani mine, having their opportunity to grow and succeed, is a really encouraging thing.
Fantastic. Now, Amanda, I know I've been secretly informed that you and Nicole Flint, two of the very, very finest members of the Liberal Party, and you didn't get there on a quota system. Shock horror. You actually did it with your own talent. Wow. Go tell the Labor Party that one. You are speaking, you and Nicole, next on the July 19th. At the Roseville branch. That's the Conservative Forum there. So people who want to go, we'll put up the address there that people, or the email address people can go to get bookings to hear. You and Nicole Flint would be absolutely fantastic evening. Give us a very tiny little hint of what you'll be talking about.
Oh, I wouldn't want to ruin the fun. Look, I've actually been down here with Nicole in the last 24 hours, and one of the things we've been talking about has been the importance of people on our side of politics being willing to go beyond our comfort zone of dealing with matters of the economy, because while those things are important, if we don't also deal with cultural issues like, for instance, free speech and academic freedom, things we've just talked about, then they ultimately have economic implications. And I think that's something our side needs to get more comfortable with and be prepared to work on.
Fantastic. Amanda Stoker, always great to speak to you, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.